Hey everybody, this is a little bonus episode that is not educational at all, but it is highly entertaining. Right after the Jack Links Cup, actually, Jason Rambo and I got together at his hotel down in Fort Lauderdale and recorded a podcast episode until about 4 o'clock in the morning. I don't really know why we thought that was a good idea, but we did it anyway. And probably a little bit of the sleep deprivation caused us to get into some topics that we don't normally talk about. We kind of wanted to take the approach of, my podcast is always me going off being very educational and through the filter of a coach, and his podcast is always him being an interviewer with people like me on there as guests that they're trying to, pull information out of. And so Jason and I are really good friends. We talk to each other on the phone probably way more than we should. And every time I get on the phone with him, it's a 2 or 3 hour long conversation, and we solve all the world problems, so to speak, which is why that's what we're calling this dual released episode. So it's kind of a cool little thing going on, basically, because it's a multi-hour long podcast. What we decided to do was split it in half, and I'm going to be releasing the first half of our conversation today, and the second half of the conversation is going to be released on the Dead Pair podcast on Thursday morning. So what we're going to do is, the way that this podcast kind of is split up, the first half is kind of like basically him and I are having a conversation about the NSCA and some things that we think we can do to improve the game and grow the sport. And the second half is just kind of like two friends talking to each other. It's a really good personal conversation. I think it's fun to kind of listen to, because it kind of shows both of our personalities a little bit more than I think many of you are probably used to seeing on our podcast, because we don't really get the opportunity to do that, which is why we did this. So anyways, I hope you enjoy the conversation. It's a lot of fun. Again, not educational. We just did it because why not? And to kind of just both co-promote each other's podcasts, because we're good friends and we want to help each other out. So anyway, just a real quick summary of what this week will be because of this. Again, I'm releasing this when you're listening to it on Monday. He's going to be releasing his on Thursday, but this Wednesday, the 15th of March, on my YouTube Live podcast, the informal podcast, not the educational one. Jason's going to join me as a guest. So the two of us are going to be live on the Journey podcast Wednesday, and we can kind of tease some of the information and stuff we talk about on the episode coming out on the Dead Pair podcast. But anyways, if you listen to this and you enjoyed the conversation, check out the second half on Jason and Sean's podcast, which is the Dead Pair podcast. You can find it on any podcast app that you like to listen to episodes on. You can Google them, find their website, everything. It's very easy to find. And if you are not already, subscribe to those guys and follow them on social media and on YouTube. They're great guys and they do a lot for the sport, so I'd like to try to help them out. But let's be honest, their podcast is like 2 years old and mine's like 2 weeks old, so they're really helping me out. So, all right, cool. Well, I hope you enjoy it. Bye. Actually, just kidding, not bye. I just realized I forgot to mention that you will find out early on, because we talk about how impromptu it is. We tried to, because it was like 4 o'clock in the morning, we couldn't record in Jason's hotel room because his family was sleeping. The hotel would not let us use the meeting room. We couldn't find anything other than a workout room with a humming ice maker that I unplugged and forgot to re-plug in before we left, and a bunch of people in the hallway and a horrendous echo. So I did my best to edit the audio to make it listenable, I guess that's a word. I did my best on that, but just an apology. It's really not bad. It's just, for someone like me who's a total nerd about this stuff, it annoys me, and I have to throw it out there. So yeah, we'll see. We'll test out each other's audio engineering, because whoever has the better audio, the Journey podcast or the Dead Pair podcast, we'll get a little self-awarded trophy and see who's better. So, all right, cool. Now, bye. So we'll just get into whatever we want to talk about. But
well, this is definitely impromptu.
Yeah.
I mean, a fitness center in a hotel. I mean, what a better podcast room.
Yeah. I don't know if this will make it into the episode, but if anybody is listening, well, hopefully you're listening because it is a podcast. But basically, we wanted to record a podcast, so we got kicked out of the meeting. We weren't allowed to go into the meeting room, and they were cleaning the hotel lobby. So Jason and I are sitting in his hotel lobby in Fort Lauderdale, or no, in the hotel fitness room in Fort Lauderdale right now, recording a podcast. Very nice little setup. But I will say they have the acoustic foam for the echo. That works terrible.
Yeah, no kidding.
Oh man. So let's just start off real quick. Tell me a little bit about the Jack Links, because I wasn't able to shoot it. What did you think?
Yeah, no, it was. They're always spot on with the amenities. I think it's so cool that they have Natalie's set up around all the courses. Plenty of waters. They've always got, of course, beef jerky and apples and oranges out there. I would say the crew did an excellent job of keeping up with targets and machines loaded and all that. There was a few backups here and there, but it was mainly because they had a small problem or something, but they got it fixed pretty quick.
Mm-hmm.
The target variety, I was hoping for a little bit more variety. Let's put it that way. Don't get me wrong, Doug Vine said stuff that's big. We all know that. I mean, he's known for that, and that club's known for that. But I think it'd be cool if they got a little bit more creative, maybe, especially for a big shoot like that. Because let's face it, if you look at the numbers, David, maybe I'm wrong, but the only thing bigger in this country is nationals.
There were over 1,000 people, right?
There were over 1,000 shooters there. Yeah.
Wow.
And it's amazing too, like, speaking of that, like the dinner on Saturday night, the line went, how big the pavilion is. I mean,
yeah.
In two different directions, and it was anywhere from 50 to 60 people deep at a time. And I thought, well, I might as well get in line. And it only took about 5 minutes before I had food in my hand.
Yeah.
So, and that's not bad, really. I mean,
that's what I've heard a lot of people say, actually.
They cranked it out pretty quick. I was blown away the amount of guns they gave away. I could not believe. I think they had over $60,000 in giveaways. They had advertised 50, but they went way beyond that. I mean, the one Krieghoff they gave away was over $18,000. So,
wow.
I mean, it wasn't all just competition guns. There was a lot of cool stuff too.
Cool.
So, but that was impressive. And then, of course, the big announcement was that they've upped the purse to $300,000 for next year. So that's even going to draw.
Did they actually announce that?
Yeah, they did.
Okay, so we can put that in this episode.
Yeah, right. I would have said it if not. But, no, they made the announcement. It's going to be $300,000. I'm curious to see what they'll do, if they'll add a fourth course.
Yeah.
Or how they're going to handle if they turn out, a much bigger volume of people. It's amazing to me because the only thing I've ever seen that compares to that is the Nationals. Of course, that place is set up for big volume of shooters.
Mm-hmm.
They continue to expand. I don't know if you saw or not. They had the Halise rings.
Yeah. Oh yeah, I know.
And
yeah,
that's really cool. I still haven't done that yet.
It's very fun.
I want to do it, but I guess if I had something to pick on, like I said, it'd be the target variety. I want to see something more creative.
Mm-hmm.
We've all seen the trampolines and all that kind of stuff, but just I don't know. Make one of the courses fun. I mean, it's been proven, and Joe Skull even said on our podcast a while back. Zach Keenbaum had pretty much ran the blue course. No, I don't think he straightened it, but he turned a monster number that nobody else could touch last year.
Mm-hmm.
And he lost on Joe Skull's softer targets.
Yeah.
On the red course. So that proves to me you don't need big targets to beat people. People are going to miss. Look, I missed a ton of the easy ones.
Yeah.
And those are the targets I shouldn't be missing. So I think if they just did something that was more fun, lighten it up a little bit, be creative, do something cool, do something different, I think that would be really cool because this is a signature event. Am I right in saying that the only thing bigger in this country is the Nationals as far as volume?
I mean, if it is 1,000 people, then the U.S. Open probably is a couple hundred bigger. U.S. Open's probably 1,200 people ish, somewhere around there.
Right. Yeah, I forgot about that. I don't know why I forgot about that.
Yeah. But here's the interesting thing that I'm curious to know, because I know what it was like last year, but unfortunately being unable, I'm probably the only professional shooter that goes to a major shoot but doesn't shoot it.
I was thinking the same thing. Thanks for dressing the elephant in the room.
Yeah, I mean, I literally just got here at 1:00 this previous morning, so I wasn't able to shoot any bit of the tournament. But so I don't know, but I can compare it to last year, and I would imagine they probably didn't regress in this, but essentially being if you are the third largest tournament in the United States, that also means that you're the third largest tournament in the world.
Right.
So being the third largest tournament in the world, which is a pretty awesome feat, being the second year that they ever had it.
Right.
The interesting thing that I thought, and this was from my opinion, just observing it today, but also shooting it last year, it doesn't feel that way. It feels more like it's got the feel of
like an intimate shoot.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And I think that that's a very, very talking with the Jack Links guys, that's what they were trying to do, and I think that it's cool that it seems like they did that. And so I commend them for that. I think that's really, really neat. And, I'm really interested to see where it goes.
Well, let's talk about the other aspect of Jack Links, and of course, that's the purse. What was the purse in Dubai?
I have no idea.
I thought it was $200,000. I thought it was the same as what Jack Links was.
I really don't know.
But with Jack Links increasing to $300,000 next year, does that make it the largest paying shoot? I mean, I know there's been bigger in the past.
Yeah.
But as far as, we know it's the biggest in the United States, unless you're throwing pigeons.
Right.
but as far as sporting clays go, that is the largest in the United States, correct?
Oh, for sure in the United States, yeah.
So, but that's definitely a lure. I mean, people want to come and try it for that money, but it's, and I don't want to toot any horns here or anything. I don't mean it this way. Sean and I had, and by the way, Sean's not here, unfortunately, but Sean and I had probably no less than a dozen people walk up to us and say that they're either at that shoot or that they started shooting tournaments because of the podcast.
Yeah.
And that blows me away, dude. It still does.
Yeah.
I mean, you know me, David, on a personal level, and I'm not that guy, right?
You're incredibly arrogant.
But no, I mean, Sean and I are still humble enough that it's hard for us to comprehend that kind of thing. But people are going to these tournaments. They're listening to what we're saying, and they're getting out and experiencing these big tournaments and seeing some big targets and what it's like to be at one of these, and it's becomes what do they call that? A claycation.
Yeah.
Because so many people, just like Sean and I, have taken their families there for the week.
Yeah.
It's not just about going to the tournament. It's more about the experience and not just the big targets and the big money. It's the whole experience of it. And there were so many people from up north that were down there, which I think is really cool. So it's a perfect time of year for it. Everybody wants to get down to Florida in some good weather when it's wintertime.
Yeah. Oh, absolutely.
But if you had to pick on something, and I know you didn't shoot the target, so we'll leave that out of it. If you had to pick on something, what do you think would be really cool that they could do to improve that shoot without spending buttloads of money?
That's a really good question.
I'm asking you this because, you put on the AFS, or not the Nationals, but the AFS Invitational.
Yeah.
And everybody still talks about it. I mean, I run into people that were there that still talk about that.
Yeah.
But you're good at creating experience.
Yeah.
You know, so if you had to tweak something, what would you change or do different?
I think that the reason why I really only have interest in doing invitationals is because of what you can do at a small shoot that you can't do at a big shoot. And so I think once you determine the path that you want to take, then that kind of locks you into what you can create as far as an experience. Because what made that shoot that I put on so much different was honestly a lot of stuff that I didn't really do. What made it so different and so special was what I intended in the format of it, but had no control whether or not it happened. I just did things to try to make it happen, which was that, you know, for example, at the Invitational, I didn't allow people to bring golf carts. Right. I literally said, you do not bring your golf cart, because if you bring it, I will not let you take it out. I didn't allow people to bring their own ammo. I didn't allow people to have a registration. I didn't allow people to pick what squad they shot. I literally took every choice away from every person, and so that I could curate a specific experience that I wanted them to have, which was I wanted to use shuttle, so the whole squad is stuck on the same cart, so that way they can talk to each other and they get to know each other. Yeah. I wanted to not have any choice in ammo, and I didn't want them to be able to go to registration, because I wanted them to feel like when they got there, they were expected, and all of the things that they were going to be doing there were already planned for them. So all they had to do was show up, and that's all. Yeah. I didn't want to even have them feel like, my goal was to make it to where, other than the auction, the Calcutta, on Saturday night, I wanted to make it to where nobody even had to touch their wallet the whole time they were there. And for the purpose being that I wanted to direct their attention to something else, which was the people. Yeah. And so because that's the thing that we so desperately lose when you get multi-hundred into the multi-thousand number of participants at a tournament, where when things get so big, your actual own personal experience gets very small. Yeah. Because all that ends up happening is you end up hanging out with the 5 people that you know.
Well, I don't know. They had free beer. A lot of people hung out.
Yes,
yeah. Friday night, so.
But what ends up happening is they end up hanging out with the people that they're there with, you know? Yeah. And so so what made my thing so cool was that when people weren't shooting, because that I didn't have it to where, you know, I also spaced it out so that you couldn't show up, shoot all your tournament targets really fast, and then leave and go. I made it to where you're going to shoot 25 targets in the morning, 25 targets in the afternoon. Hey, you should probably stay. I'm going to give you a free lunch. And there was 40 people there total. So people ended up laying out blankets and playing board games in the front yard. And they ended up playing cards in the clubhouse with people that they'd never met before. Right. And they made friends. And that was my goal. And then on top of that, there's a lot of things that being OCD and ADHD that I think made a difference, but people might not really understand what it was that made them feel different about it. But those are things that you can do at big shoots. Like, you can make it aesthetically beautiful. You can do certain things like that, but you can't get a 500 or even a 200 person event to feel like you can the other way.
No, I don't think so either. But if you, let me twist this around a minute. So, Dave Kelly, the general manager there at Quail Creek, comes to you and he says, "Okay, David, I want you to take a golf cart during the tournament. I want you to run all the way around the course and just note things and come back to me and tell me what you could do to improve." Yeah. What idea would you come up with?
My idea would be a little radical.
Oh boy, here we go.
I mean, let me rephrase the question. Your question.
Okay. Because you know where I'm going, right?
Yeah. Let's say that I got hired as a consultant for the shoot. and they said, we want you to make this as best as it possibly can. And we're just going to assume that nobody knows more about that than you. I'm not saying that I do, but just for the sake of this argument, saying let's pretend like I have the most amount of knowledge. The important thing to be would be, what are you trying to have people experience? So as an outsider looking in, I can't really, honestly, I can't say what I would improve, because what I would improve would be through the filter of what I think is important. And I know, talking to the Jack Links guys, I know what they thought was important and what they valued. And from what I observed, I think that they made an improvement on that from last year, which was already the best that I had seen in that. And that was that they, number one, and I'm not going to put words in their mouth, but from my understanding of some of the things that they thought is, number one, they wanted to make the best tournament of the year. They wanted to create a tournament that everybody talks about. And what they deem to be the thing that causes that is different than what I may. But obviously they have something right, because it went from 500 people to 1,000 people this year.
Yeah.
And it's probably going to get bigger next year. If I was a consultant for them and they asked me that question, I would have to filter it based off of what the answer to my question would be, which is, what do you want? What are you going to consider to be the most valuable thing? Give me your filter for my decision making, and I'll consult you on that. If it was my choice on what to make that shoot be, then if we're specifically talking about the course, I personally thought I didn't see the courses, all of them, because I didn't get to shoot them. I saw a total of about 6 of the 36 stations. So from what I saw, I was shooting myself for not being able to shoot, because it looked so much fun. But I also realized I have the 0.01% perspective on targets, target difficulty. But the strange thing that I would do would be that I actually would have no stands. I would shoot in hoops.
Really?
Yeah.
I don't know. The sun beat down pretty good today. I was really
I know.
liking the stands.
That is strange. That's why I mean it'd be a little radical. I would take the stands away. I would make the course where the people would be shooting in, like standing under the trees for shade. But I would do it that way because to me, that's just what I value natural beauty. It's a weird thing to say, and I realize probably 4 other people would agree with me, but that's what I would do.
Well, if you don't mind, I want to shift gears for a second.
Yeah.
So we had talked earlier today about like the general climate of sporting clays in this country, and Sean and I had someone ask us a question over the weekend that kind of took me aback for a second, and they're like, "What can you contribute the growth of the sport to in the last few years, because it really has blown up." Earlier in this past winter, Anthony had made a comment when I was out there at his place that, we've got this growth, but then you see guys dropping off. A lot of them, and we'll dig into this in a minute, but I think a lot of them hit that Master's Class slump. Mm-hmm. I think that's what causes a lot of it. But anyway, he asked me this gentleman asked Sean and I what we contributed most growth to. Now, my 2 answers, I said it was 2-part. I think one was the growth of youth shooting has just really blown up. I mean, SCTP Nationals has broke records the last 2 years for attendance. I think that's a big one. And I think the other thing too is media, whether it is these podcasts, whether it's social media, the information about all these shoots is so easy to get to now. Casey Chase does a fabulous job with Score Chaser, and which was why it was so valuable for us to partner with her. But
yeah,
I think that's a lot of it. If you think back, David, let's go clear back to when you won your first U.S. Open. People didn't know about that for 2 or 3 months until the magazine came out. Now they know about it live while it's happening. Mm-hmm. So those were my 2 answers, and maybe I'm off base. So let me twist that around. You answer that question. What do you think the growth is, or what do you think the reason for the growth is in the last few years?
In clay target shooting, or in sporting clays competitive shooting?
Well, the person asked asked me directly about sporting clays.
Like NSCA tournament type stuff?
Yeah, I think that's what they were referring to.
I think I don't have the real measurable data on this, and it would be interesting to see. So I don't necessarily know what the growth is, but I think it's very important that we try to understand how we measure it. I would not be surprised if it's stagnant or dropping negatively the past couple of years because of the cost of things. But because we have to look at it this way. I think as people who are, I made this comment on, someone asked a question on Facebook about something, and it was in a Facebook group of like 40,000 people, and there basically, the question was, what sells more, sponsored professional athletes, social media influencers, or I forget what the last thing was. And everybody was, basically the question was set up in a way to where everybody was kind of responding and giving crap to these social media influencers who are not professionals.
Right.
And saying like, it wasn't the intent of the person that asked the question. It was just people that were answering, basically like, giving crap to these social media. My comment to them was, guys, I know that we have 40-some thousand people in this Facebook group, but there are 18 million people that shoot this game. Every single one of us is in the 0.1% of this game. And so as any person who is a member of the NSCA is by far the 1%. We're the equivalent of the billionaires in the United States.
Right.
And so the problem is that the filter that we use for grading the growth of the sport is the participation in 7 tournaments per year. Yeah. It's the 5 regionals, the US Open, and the National Championship. And we look at it that if those shoots are growing, the sport is growing. But that's a total of probably no more than 5,000 people. Mm-hmm. And so the problem that we can possibly run into is that if those keep growing, and if that's what the focus of the NSCA is to grow those 7 shoots, well, the problem is actually we're going to kill the sport.
Right. Because,
we may be tailoring our decisions and the investment of the money that the NSCA brings in to the 0.01% of people that are going to that, 5,000 people that are going to those tournaments. But what about the monthly tournaments at the clubs in the middle of, Montana?
Yeah.
Or, New Hampshire? Literally my Arkansas State Championship has 21 people in Arkansas in it. And
really?
Yes. And like the state championship this year is in Texarkana. The club, Rocky Creek Outdoors, that's hosting that tournament, half of its property is in Texas and half of it is in Arkansas. So that club actually can have both the Texas State and the Arkansas State Championship.
Oh, wow.
And that I will be surprised if there are 150 people that show up for our state shoot at a club in Texas.
Wow.
Okay, the Texas State shoot has over 1,000 people every year. A club hosting the Arkansas State shoot in Texas is barely going to hit 150. My home, Hillendale, they get 200 plus in the middle of February with 9-degree weather and a blizzard.
Right.
So the question is, is the sport really growing? It depends how we measure it. My real answer to that question is I don't really 100% know. I'm not saying it's not, and I'm not also saying that it is. I'm just saying it depends how we measure. My answer to you for why does it seem like the big tournaments are growing participation would be because that's where we're spending all of our time and money on.
Yeah. Well, Sean's answer to that was kind of interesting too, is he thought that COVID had a lot to do with it because people were looking for something to get out and do.
For sure, yeah.
And, outdoors seemed to be the green light for everything COVID. You didn't need a mask and all that other crap. And he seemed to think that had something to do with it. And maybe it did. Maybe there was a lot of new shooters that came from the COVID era that were looking to get outside and do something. I think, and something else that I mentioned too, is the safety aspect of it, because And I don't think we focus enough on this when we're trying to advertise sporting clays. It's statistically the safest sport in the world.
Yeah.
You know, I mean, I keep going back to my comment's always been the same. SCTP had 3,500 kids that shot over 1 million rounds in 17 days. Not one kid left with a Band-Aid. You can't show me a high school football game that's happened.
Yeah.
Any high school football game or any Friday night.
Yeah.
Okay, so, and you know, you look at the demographics of it, ages 8 to 80, doesn't matter your gender, it doesn't matter your race, it doesn't matter, none of that matters.
Yeah.
You can be, you know, skinny as a rail or 200 pounds overweight, it doesn't matter.
Yeah.
You can still compete in this game. And I think that is kind of the lure too. And mom, dad, kids, they can all compete. They can all participate in this game. That's kind of cool because how many NASCAR fans out there can take their family sedan out on the track?
Yes.
Right? You know, so it's, I don't know. I think that has a lot to do with it too. I think there's a lot of determining factors for why the growth is, but is it sustainable growth? And meaning, are we going to lose people? You know, we all have talked about the college kids and the purse strings are cut and then we don't see them for 10 years, right? I mean, there's a few breakouts in that, and you know, you're one of them. You know, Joe Finizzi's one of them. He's still competing even though he's in college. So, but there's a lot of kids that hit that, you know?
Yeah.
It's just, do I buy ramen noodles or a flight of shells this week? So,
Right.
But it's kind of an interesting topic, and I'd really like to speak with someone from the NSSF that does studies on this.
Yeah.
You know, to find out where it is going. I know trap is huge.
Yeah.
We don't give enough credit to trap.
Yeah. I mean, I know for a fact that clay target shooting sports is, that as an overarching category is growing drastically. I also know that, you know, NSCA membership is growing. And I also know that the tournaments that we think of as big tournaments are also growing, but I also see really what I see, you know, from the top down perspective is really a redistribution of participation, because there's certain areas that are drying up and that participation is moving to other areas.
Yeah.
And I mean, if you think about it, there's a lot of clubs in certain areas that are closing down because they can't afford to stay open, but in other areas, there's clubs that are getting built.
Right.
So, you know, I mean, literally in the whole state of Arkansas, there is now 3 or 4 gun clubs.
That's it?
For sporting clays.
Wow.
Yeah.
Well, you know something else too that I was made aware of, and I never knew it existed. There's a lot of underground clubs.
Yes, yeah.
And I didn't know that.
Yeah.
Last fall, I actually sold some traps to a guy that has one, and he invited me to come participate, and I'm like, okay, whatever. And it's protection 5-stand.
Yeah.
Which is really
That's
cool.
really cool, actually.
Yeah, and then they do this thing called chip draw. So you're still partnered with someone, but you draw cards, and whatever number your card is, you take it up and put it in the box, and you get these stack of chips. You buy chips so you can participate. So you go up and you put your card in the box, and then whoever else got your card. So if you drew a number 2 and they got a number 2,
yeah,
they're your partner for protector again. But it boils down to the last 2 pair, and you shoot off the money. I showed up, and this was ran on a Monday morning. There was 50 people there.
That's amazing.
And there was some serious cash flying around.
Yeah.
To the point where it was like, this is cool. Well, the problem is I went in there and won money, and I haven't been invited since. So. But no, that's not true. They've invited me back because they want their money back. But I never knew these clubs existed.
Yeah.
But by going to this one, I found out about 3 more.
Yeah.
You know, and they're like, this isn't all that's around.
Yeah.
I mean, these guys have got probably 10 to 12 traps on 2 5-stands with lights.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, the one guy's got a fully enclosed and heated 5-stand, but it's big enough for 2 shooters per station.
Yeah.
So the station's double wide, each one of the 5 stations, enclosed with like friggin' stadium lights on top of it. I mean, this is incredible.
But, man, OK Corral here, They just installed hardwired lights on their sporting clays course.
Are you serious?
Yeah, like any day you can go shoot sporting clays at night there.
That's wow. That's so cool.
How cool is that?
That is cool. Before we go any further, we got to talk about the shirt you want. I thought you were wearing a Hawaiian shirt. Those are actually clay targets over top of flowers. Or something.
That's why I wore it. It's the Claycation shirt from Bear Pelt.
That's okay. Where do I order one of these?
You can actually I don't think that you can order one of these. This was more like a prototype thing.
So you're gonna get in trouble from Heather and Eric for wearing that in public because now everybody's gonna want one.
Oh yeah. Well, I wear it all the time.
It's a good thing it's an audio pocket. Everybody's gonna be emailing you wanting to see that shirt. So.
Well, people know if you go to the Bear Pelt website and you buy the Claycation shooting vest, it's the same pattern.
Yeah, but that's a cool shirt, man.
It's a sweet shirt, yeah.
Do you know how much better I would make that shirt? So Sean and I are getting ready to release a podcast we got coming out, and I think it's an interesting topic that we can't dive too much into that subject because neither you or I have been in those shoes. It's about being down class from Master Class. Mm-hmm. Sean was recently down class, and the guests that we have coming on have been back and forth between Masters and AA, I don't know, probably 4 or 5 times each. And I think it's an interesting topic, and I can't wait to hear their perspectives on it. You know, I haven't made it to Master Class, and, you know, unless you get hit in the head with a shovel, you're never going to leave Master Class. So,
if I quit shooting shoots, I will.
Yeah, you keep showing up with a camera instead of a paparazzi. You will.
At least I'm shooting something.
Yeah, right. But I think it's an interesting topic, and I think this is something that we can talk about, though, if you don't mind, is there's forever been a debate and a debacle on Master Class. You know, Ben said that eventually the way the system works, we're all going to end up in Master Class. And I've said you know that for a fact, I've said it for the last 2 years, I don't want to go to Master Class. Mm-hmm. You know, I'm not delusional to think that I can go to a regional and compete with somebody like you or Zach or any of the other people at the top because I haven't done it for 20 years nonstop, and I don't have the time and the resources to put into it to get to that level. So for me, the statement that really hangs up my mind is when we had Mr. Hampton. Sean and I had him on our show, and he made the comment. He's like, you know, you take, you know, Bob Smith from North Dakota, that's a Master Class shooter. He wins every shoot in the area. They don't want him in anything but Master Class. The problem is when he goes to the Nationals, he's so far down the list you can't find him. He's at 250 place or whatever, right? So how do you fix it? Now, my first thought was, okay, make it so it's like 35 punches. Well, guess what? The guy that's still winning everything in North Dakota is going to end up at 35 punches. Mm-hmm. And then I said, okay, well, maybe it's got to be a percentage and punches. Like you had to carry a certain percentage on your targets. Again, I think that equates to another problem because what if the target center there is soft and he's shooting 95s every weekend, right? So, but you had an interesting twist on this.
Yeah.
So let's hear it.
What if I want to sell the idea? No.
Oh
yeah.
Well, wait a minute. If you're selling it to NSCA, you ain't getting squat.
I'm not doing. They'll make me pay to give it.
They'll make you pay to give your opinion.
Yeah.
Short form. Too.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I'm going to back up in answering that because I feel the need to say this other thing. So right now, basically what we're discussing is what can we do to structure the format of competitive shooting so that we're not having the problem of people getting to a point where they feel like there's nothing left for them to do, and so then they stop shooting.
Right.
Or they feel very discouraged because once they get to the penultimate thing for them, that they can't win because they're shooting against people like me.
Right.
And that's a very serious problem.
It is.
And if any other company has a very serious problem with the demographic of the of their consumers, then what they do is very serious market research.
Right.
And the question is, why have we not done that? Because the thing that's very frustrating to me, and this is where I honestly, I hope that somebody at the NSCA listens to me in the next 5 minutes and gets mad and calls me, because it blows my mind why I have not been called about this, and not just me, but anybody else.
Yeah.
Here's the thing: if we're talking about doing market research, and we were just talking about how many people go to these tournaments, right?
Right.
And national championship will have anywhere from 200 to 2,600 people at that tournament. Okay, I personally by myself have 1,600 students. So more than 50% of the people at our national championship. I have more than 50% of that many people as my own personal students that I regularly work with. So that means that if you were to put together someone like me and Wendell and Anthony and Brad Kidd and Corey Cruz and Zach Kinebaum, all the people that coach professionally as a job, my income on every bill I pay is paid by my job as teaching, because everyone knows all the pros lose money by competing.
Right.
And that is a marketing expense for me and all of us. So who has a better understanding of the mind of the consumer
than the coaches?
Yes, not a single person, because guess what? Anybody at the NSCA, what's their job? Their job is to work at headquarters doing whatever one of their job descriptions is, depending on who we're talking about. What's my job? My job is every hour of every day to be talking to the people that are paying the NSCA money and listening to what their goals are, listening to what their challenges are, and finding a solution for them to marry the two things. So nobody has a better understanding of what the problem is that the NSCA has with membership and classification better than somebody like me or Anthony or Wendell or anybody like. Not a single person has a better understanding, because it's literally my job to find out the problem and fix it.
Right.
Why in 20 years have I never been called one time? I've never been called one time to say, hey, what is the potential problem that you see with the way that we're doing things? That's a serious problem. There's no market research. And so this is not a criticism of the people in the NSCA saying that you don't know what you're doing as a job, but it's a criticism of the people in the NSCA saying that there's a serious oversight here, or it's being done and working as intended.
Yeah.
And so what my observation would be is that one really good, if instead we were to say, what can we do to, like, if you give the goal of the classification system to accurately allow an unending amount of challenging competition for every person at every level, if that's what the goal of the classification system of the NSCA is, so that no matter how good I am at shooting, for the rest of my life, I will always have a possibility of winning wherever I go, so that it's fun for me, then the classification system fails at that goal. But if the goal is to encourage people to spend a lot of money to go to a lot of tournaments, so they can get a lot of punches, so they can make Master Class and then therefore make money at the NSCA, then the classification system works very well.
Yeah.
So
that's what I'm saying.
Okay. So
that's the current state of affairs.
Exactly. And so that's the problem.
Yeah.
And so that's what we have to identify, is what is the goal here and what's the solution to that goal. And I think, and now this is obviously me as an outsider determining what the goal is of that. And it's also very understandable if we can understand that an organization can market a product but have different intentions for the product than what they market it as. That happens in every industry. So what I think that needs to be done, if the goal of the classification system is to make it to where no matter who you are, if you go to a tournament, you have a reasonable chance of winning, is that we have to break it down. Because of those 1,600 people that I have lessons with, 80, that's probably a stretch, 60% of them have made the comment to me at least once where it's like, I made Master Class, and put it this way, a vast majority of my students are people that have made Master Class all by themselves without taking any lessons. Then they get to Master Class and they're like, Jesus, my average is a 75 and these people are shooting 98s. I need to get better. Otherwise, I'm never going to win anything, and this is not fun. So that's where I come into play. And so that is a huge majority of people. And the problem is, if I fail at my job, then the NSCA loses a customer.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Right.
Because if I can't get that person to win, then they don't want to play anymore because it's not fun.
Right.
So so I think what needs to be done is that I think number one, we need to take punches out of the equation, period. Because all that punches do is it's just an accumulation of time. The more you shoot, the better classification that you get. And that's not good. It may be good to stroke your ego to be able to say, I'm a Master Class shooter. But there's a big difference between externally projected image and internally realized ego. And that internal thing is where I come into play, where it's like, okay, let me understand your psychology so I can better influence your shooting. And if you really just have no confidence in yourself because you don't think that you're as good as where you feel like you should be and people judge you on, well, now all of a sudden we have a big problem to deal with in your shooting. So what needs to happen is that, I think that we should, like I said, throw punches out. And I think we should determine a period of time that there should be a reclassification per year, whether that be in the middle of the year, 3 times a year, every quarter. I don't know. I would like it to be every quarter because I think that's good for the whole country, depending on the weather. Basically every 3 months, you reclassify people based off percentages of their score into the HOA score of the tournaments that they're shooting, not overall. And because that gives a very good percentage, and then you can have brackets of people from this percentage to this percentage, you're a master, this percentage to this percentage, you're AA.
Yeah.
And then you could also create a win percentage ratio. So if you average higher than XYZ in terms of winning tournaments, you're in none of the classes, you're in a pro class.
Right.
And so you do that, reclassify every month. So that way, if someone is in the middle of a slump, or they are a northern person shooting in the winter, and then let's say one winter they decide to go down to Florida, and they are shooting in Florida a lot, so they're dealing with different weather, better temperature, different score percentage. Reclassify them. Don't have them shooting in a score where if I were to move back to Ohio and I should go to winter tournaments and my score percentage, everybody's score percentage goes down by 3 to 5% during the winter up north because you're shooting with 4 inches of extra clothing and you can't move and you're cold, you can't even feel your gun. You have to reclassify. So that's why you need multiple months. Then on top of that, I think the important thing to do is I think there should be a tiered system based on the
shoot itself.
Yeah, based off of the importance of tournaments. So I think that you should have different classifications of what class you're competing in, based off of if you're competing in a local monthly tournament at a club versus if you're competing at a state championship versus I personally would consider anything from a regional championship higher that should be its own category. I don't think you need to break it down more than that, because if you're breaking it down more than that, then you're really going to basically only allow them to count their score from the previous year.
Right.
So I think that and the reason for that is because you have the local guys that they're shooting 95s and 97s on their monthly tournaments at home and winning HOAs there, but you throw them into a regional championship and they're going to average 82%.
Right.
And because they don't have the experience of competing at that level on those targets and that level of technicality of the target set and everything else that comes into play, and they're not a master class shooter. A professional or master class shooter, if you're talking about somebody at the national level, is totally different than somebody shooting that score that never leaves an hour from their house.
Right. Exactly.
It's not the same, and you cannot compete with that. You can't compare those two people. But if the reason why this system that I'm talking about works is because those guys that can shoot those scores, that would be a master class at their home club. If I go to their home club to shoot a monthly tournament, they could beat me.
Right.
Because I can't shoot 120 out of 100. Right. I'm going to shoot a 97, and they might shoot a 96 or 98. Right. So, if you classify it based off of the size of the shoot, it does work to scale because you're shooting a maximum amount of targets, and those guys don't miss on their targets, and neither will I. But then when we make it a bigger tournament, I'm still not going to, hopefully, and they probably will because they like the experience, and I think that's the best system that we can have.
Well, every solution to a problem has the potential to generate more problems.
Oh, always, yeah.
But I think
I'm great at creating problems.
I am too, so that's my wife. But I think where we're at currently, if we keep going the way we're going, we're gonna end up with even bigger problems. Yeah. I think it's gonna balloon, and we have to try something before we end up with nothing.
Yeah.
I'm a big advocate. Tony Rivera wrote some articles for Clay Shooting USA, and when I read the first one that came out this past winter, he talked about just money in itself. If we all put an extra $100 into the shoot, and there's 100 people that shows up for the shoot, it's $10,000 extra dollars.
Yeah.
The prize money, not including, of course the club has to pay the NSCA and the state target fees. That's fine. Charge whatever you got to charge for that. Charge what the club's got to charge. Say if it's normally $75 for a 100-bird shoot, okay, we'll make it $175 and put all that money back to classes. It's $10,000 extra dollars for 100 people. So I was a big advocate of that. I'm still, the jury's still out. I'm still waiting on some clubs to try it and get back to me.
Yeah.
I've announced it on the podcast, and I told them, I said, anybody that wants to do it, let us know. We'll announce it.
Yes. Question. Let me interrupt you unless I'm going to distract you from your thought.
No.
Okay. Does that system have a different classification, or would it use NSCA classification?
So the second article just came out, and it talks about match play.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And that works off of kind of...
It's handicap kind of?
It's handicap. And I need to, before I speak out my rear, I need to read more of the article, to be honest with you. I haven't read it all yet.
Yeah.
I need to read the whole thing through before I can comment on it. But from what I'm taking it, it's a little bit like what you did at the AFS Invitational.
Yeah.
Okay, and now here's the point that Tony made, and before everybody rolls their eyes and says, yeah, whatever, this can never work. If you go to a bass tournament and you walk up to anybody in a parking lot, none of them say, oh, I'll never win, I'm just here to fish with my buddies. But when you go to a sporting clays tournament, 90% of them are saying that.
99.
Yeah. So you've got Masters AA, A, B, C, D, E class. You got 7 classes.
Yeah.
There's probably only a handful in each one of those 7 classes, call it 5, that feel they can win their class. Mm-hmm. Probably only a total of 5 that feel they can win the whole thing. Mm-hmm. With what Tony's proposing is every single person that shows up there can win.
Yeah.
I think that gets some of the elite at the top to grit their teeth a little bit, and some of the very, very bottom to grit their teeth a little bit. Mm-hmm. But it sure does raise eyebrows to everybody in between. Yeah. So I'm anxious to read the article, and maybe we'll follow up on that. I know you talked about having Sean and I on your show coming up. Maybe by then I'll read the article and dig into it a little bit deeper. But I think that might be a possibility, maybe incorporating some of that. But I really like your idea of going with the percentage. Now, is that not what the CPSA does?
It's very similar to what the CPSA does. I don't know if this. I know that the CPSA does reclassify multiple times in the year, or at least once in the year. I don't know if they scale it based off of the level of tournament.
Now, do they have to shoot selection shoots for that? Or is it just
I think
flat
it's
out wherever they shoot?
That's a good question. I don't know.
Okay. I thought they had to shoot selection shoots.
I mean, I know they have selection shoots like for their teams and stuff. I just don't know.
Yeah.
Like it's actually my opinion as a competitor. I love the way they pick their team, like the English shooting team, because it's basically like it's the way that we pick our Olympic team. It's like, this is the shoot. If you want to make the team, you come to the shoot and you have to win.
Oh, okay.
It's pretty cool.
Gotcha. Yeah.
Yeah.
Very interesting. I just think there's, look, everybody's got a ton of ideas. I've got a ton of great ideas. The trouble is most of them suck. But, I just think that, the NSCA sends out a survey card after the Nationals every year. Now they're doing electronic, it's all email.
Yeah.
What can we improve on? What did you like? What didn't you like? Everything else. Why not take a vote inside the board saying, here is 5 possible solutions, and send it out to every NSCA member, and the majority wins. We're going to try this way.
Yeah.
We got to try something.
Yeah. I do want to say, because I just spent 10 minutes dogging everybody there, that I can dog them on one thing, but I can compliment them hugely on another, because I don't think that I don't think any organization or person individually, not just talking about NSCA, just the way I view the world, I don't think it's black or white. Right. I think everything is gray, and so I feel like
very gray.
Yes, yeah. I feel like if I can criticize you on one thing, but that doesn't mean that you're bad, and I can compliment you hugely on another one. So for me, like, for people listening, I apologize. I just got a notification that I have lessons tomorrow. In case I forgot, it reminds me of 12:30. Yeah, it's like, yeah. But what the NSCA I think did that I am so proud of them and excited about and enthusiastic about, and I think that it was a really good first attempt at, was what you were involved with Mark Balthazar. Yeah, which was the Super Squad and
live coverage.
The live coverage of it, the investment made to the property, and that was the most exciting thing that I've had in shooting in a decade. And I think that's so cool.
It's funny you say that, because Justin had called me. So Mark asked me if I'd be a part of it, and maybe I didn't quite totally comprehend what he was asking me to do, but I thought it was exciting,
Yeah.
And so then he had asked Justin, and Justin agreed, and then Justin and I had called back and forth a few times, and we were both pretty nervous, because we didn't want to go out there, if this thing was just a throw together thing, we didn't want to look like idiots, but I had faith in Mark that he was going to do something good with it.
Yeah.
Mark's a good dude. Once Mark had talked to both of his conference calls a few times, Justin was pretty confident in it too, walking into it. But that really did turn out good, and I was really excited to be a part of it. And I think you're right. I think it is going to be something cool. Hopefully they ask me to do it again. But on a state level, I'm now vice president of the OSCA, and then on a national level, I was just elected a delegate for the NSCA for the state of Ohio. And so I'm starting to get a taste of some of this, and nothing happens fast.
I know.
And to make a big change like what you're proposing, boy, would it take time. The problem, I think, is that's not a change that you can do little bits at a time. It's going to have to be all or nothing, and I think that's what scares people. If you look at the NSCA as a whole, it's a big powerhouse organization, but man, they make changes that affects every shoot in the country, not just the Nationals. So I'm sure they would be terrified to make a big change like that.
Yeah.
And it may never happen, but something has to be done.
Yeah.
I don't know if that means for a temporary short term, make it 40 punches to get into Masters. But I don't know what that is. I sure would like to sit in on meetings and be a part of it, you know, and hopefully being a delegate, I get to, hopefully this topic comes up and we get to voice some opinions, you know, so.
That's the one thing that for me, this is why I love, really the best way to explain it is just like saying the free market. Because number one, as an organization with a board and an advisory council and an executive council and a bunch of members, and you have to be public about everything, and you know, nothing happens fast. And you know, I mean, I commend you for doing what you're doing and getting involved. I mean, back in the day, I got asked to be, you know, I got the call, hey, we want you to be involved in the advisory council. We want you to do this, eventually go to the executive council, the NSCA. And you know, we were doing stuff on the board together in Ohio. I think the Ohio board is a model board for the rest of the United States. I think that the OSCA is incredibly good. Everything has their problems, but I think that look at what the OSCA has done in the past 5 to 7 years with the state championship. I mean, it's incredible. But I am personally somebody, it's an incredibly good strength of mine, but a massive weakness at the same time. I think that, you know, like having to get everybody on board, present things through Robert's Rules of Order, and ask permission to speak, and have to get all these votes on. It's the most ridiculous bullshit. And it's so annoying, because what's more efficient is you get somebody in there with a good vision and then just run with it. And if they make a mistake, change it again. Deal with it as you go. And for me, and I recognize there's massive inefficiencies in that too, but I'm not a patient person when it comes to moving something forward. And it's why I'm either going to be wildly successful or a massive failure in every little venture I do, because I'm either going to bomb it or blow it up, so to speak. But and so that's going back to the whole free market thing. This is why things like other organizations trying to make a change to compete with the NSCA, which ultimately never will work. You're never gonna beat the NSCA. But if you have new games or other organizations or some other little thing that happens, you're gonna do something that's gonna force them to make a change fast, probably to be better than you, to put you out of business, and that's gonna make a difference. And so I like when things like that happen.
Well, they say nothing will make you better than competition.
Exactly right, and that's why, you know, that type of thing is good. And it doesn't necessarily have to be, you know, like the Live Tour and the PGA Tour. I'm not talking about something like that, but I'm talking about, you know, like if someone were to put together a series of shoots that uses a different classification system that registers as NSCA events, that just blows up and becomes wildly successful, then the NSCA goes, hey, that works. Let's try it.
It forces their hand.
Yes. You know, I'm a full supporter of the NSCA, but, you know, sometimes we need to convince them a little faster.
Yeah. You know, it's funny because you were talking about the OSCA and the way they do things, and I can tell you right now, I do not have, and I'm going to say this publicly, I know my other members are going to listen to this, I do not have as much anxiety being live with the TV camera pointed in my face as I do sitting in that board meeting. And you know, and the reason why is because, like, going in there, I was friends with every single member on the board. Yeah. And I thought, this is going to be really cool, you know, and make a difference. And, you know, that's the whole reason you join that stuff. And then it quickly becomes, you have to take your own personal motivations away and do what's best for the shooter. Yeah. And it's difficult because you've got club owners and managers and stuff, and it's so easy to flip switch and worry about the club. Mm-hmm. The club doesn't exist without the shooter. Right. So I'm not personally tied to a club, so it's a little bit easier for me to go, wait a minute, guys, this is about the shooters. Yeah. And sometimes it's kind of a reality check, but what I like about the OSCA is everybody that's on that, we've got a really good board right now. Super. Every single board member is a shooter. Yeah. And we're trying something new at the Ohio State shoot, being with money and giveaways. We've really increased it this year. We've upticked it really big. And there was some backlash. And even after we voted, there was some backlash. But I think the general consensus was, wait a minute, let's stop. Let's just try it this year. Let's go ahead as planned. Let's try it and see how it works. We'll reevaluate after the Ohio State shoot and make a decision as to whether or not we're going to keep it this way. So I think, hats off to every single member on that board, from Christina Laudenschlager, who's our president, everybody. They said, you know what? Yeah, let's try it. Mm-hmm. So, that's awesome. That's what that board's there for, is to improve the experience for the shooters, introduce new shooters, kind of like what Sean and I's motivation was for the podcast.
Yes.
So, that's pretty cool, but I don't see it with the NSCA, and it's not a criticism, because I know you're not talking about one little state. You're talking about the entire country. You're talking about the national championship, which is 5 times larger than the state shoots are, right? Yeah. So it's harder. You can't just make a big change. You can't just throw gas on the fire, if you will.
Yeah.
So
I would like to see the NSCA do some stuff where, like a great example would be, just randomly, I don't know why I thought of this, but thinking about new clubs popping up, but that Airport Ridge.
Yeah.
And, my question would be, why does, and maybe they do, and if they do, I apologize, but I started the club and I never got reached out in this way, but I didn't need it, but I never was, and maybe it was because they assumed I didn't need it that I didn't get reached out to, but my question would be, why does the NSCA not have a program that promotes and helps and directs the development of a new club? That says, here's a business model that works. This is the best way to structure everything so that you actually make money. Here's a structure for corporate events that works, where you can make money. This is a good pricing structure. This is basically a projected cost if you do X, Y, Z. This is a great way to structure membership. This is how you can advertise. These, I don't understand why there's not guidance like that.
I don't know.
That's one of the things that I really, really am proud of, to say that the state association in Ohio, not necessarily that they do that for a club, but they do that for the state championship, which helps the clubs. Mm-hmm. And I think you would be surprised, like how many other, I've been involved in state organizations in multiple different states, and I've never seen anything work as fluidly and efficiently like they do in Ohio. I've never even seen another state do what the OSCA does for the state championship. And obviously look at the growth of the Ohio State Championship compared to any other state championship. We may not be the biggest, but by far we are growing the fastest.
Oh yeah.
But Arkansas doesn't even have an ASCA. When I first moved there, I wanted to start one, and I went to the local clubs, and this is the exact response that I got from everybody. I said, hey, I'm starting this club, and I am just coming from being on the board for the OSCA, and look at what happened in the, not taking credit for, but look at what's been happening over there. And I would really like to start 2 things: a club owners association and an Arkansas Sporting Clays Association. But I would obviously need you to be a part of that. I'm talking to the owners and managers of every gun club. And they'd say, okay, well, how would that work? So, well, basically the clubs, it can work any way we want, but the way we do it in Ohio is the clubs pay per registered target that they throw, a percentage, and it's not expensive, basically a penny a target to 3 pennies a target. And then you can use that money to help promote. We get to vote on what we use that money for. Right. And my response to that was, well, I don't want to lose $1 a shooter for my tournaments. My response to them from that was, how many people do you have here? And it'd be like, I would always approach those people at the tournaments. I'd be like, oh, we got the biggest one I went to had 41 people. The average is around 25-ish people per tournament, and the response was. Now I will say there was one that did not have this response. It was actually pretty excited. I don't want to say who it is because I don't want people to feel bad. But this was my normal response. Well, we don't want to lose $1 a shooter. And I'd say, okay, but how many shooters do you have? Well, between 25 to 40. Okay. So how much is your profit per shooter? Whatever the profit is. Basically, what I'm saying is if I could get you 3 more shooters, I would pay your $40.
Right.
Do you not think I can get you 3 more shooters?
Right. Yeah.
That's the outlook on a lot of it.
Yeah.
And so that's frustrating.
Yeah.
But it really, if you get the right people in place, it make a big difference when it comes to the growth of that sport. Absolutely. The growth of sporting clays will happen at the grassroots level, not at the national level.
Yeah, I 100% I agree with that. But one last thing.
Yeah.
About Master Class, and then we'll move on from that. David, you know this because of your student base, and you and I have had this discussion. You've got some students that to say they have money is a slight understatement.
Yeah.
Some of them own very, very large corporations.
Yeah.
There's a lot of very high up people that shoot sporting clays. For crying out loud, Donald Trump Jr. was just at the Jack Links Cup.
Yeah.
Don't you think, and we've talked about corporate sponsorships. Yeah, okay, everybody says, well, we're shooting guns. No, wait a minute. Don't you think for a minute that the people that shoot this game that are very high up, they either own corporations or they've got a lot of money, they could very easily sponsor the NSCA or regionals or whatever? Don't you think that they see this problem and they're like, and because they compete themselves, and they're like, I'm not throwing money at something that's just a fiasco, or I'm not throwing money at something to only support the top 20 in the sport. Mm-hmm. Don't you think that's could be a determining factor? If we had a way of fixing Master Class, I guess that's my point. If we fix this problem that we have, don't you think it would be more inviting for sponsorship?
Yeah, I mean, how those people make millions and billions of dollars, right? It's that they're smart, the decisions they make with the money. Right. And right now, the reason why none of them do is because it's not a smart decision.
Thank you. There's my point. So,
can we just mark this down in history at the time that you took 5 minutes to explain something that I could say in one sentence?
I was just thinking the same thing.
I want a high five. Mark it down.
I was just thinking the same thing. It's like, wow, I talked for 2 minutes and he summed it up in one sentence. This never happens.
This
never.
This is the greatest day of my life.
Oh my God.
I'm turning over a new leaf.
Yeah. My wife edits it. She's going to be like, you got to be kidding me. What happened? You guys switched roles.
Oh, Jesus. Oh. Yeah. But here's the thing. It's not. It's not. Oh, God dang.
I was thinking it right as you said it.
Oh, God. I'm
this
crying.
goes back to the shut up, Jason. Shut up, Jason.
Oh, Jiminy. Okay, so not only is, yes, if we have to fix that, because if we fix the classification, then really what we get is, it's like, think of it this way. You and I both own podcasts. Mm-hmm. And what to you is more important when you go to attract sponsors? Is it saying that I get... Well, that's all you guys get. There's a little cliffhanger there. I cut that right before I started to answer his last question to me about solving the world's problems and fixing the NSCA. Hopefully, I apologize if I offended anybody with anything I talked about, but I tend to just say it how it is. And really, who doesn't if they care about what they're talking about? So, anyways, if you want to listen to the rest of this conversation, as you can tell, it gets funnier. This is where it starts to become really entertaining. which, man, I don't know why, never mind. I was gonna throw shade on Jason, but I can't do that because I haven't been answering his phone calls, and he'll give me a bunch of crap. But so just a reminder, if you guys want to listen to the other half of this, head over to the Dead Pair podcast. They're going to be releasing on Thursday. But for all of you that listen to my podcast, you're going to probably, well, not all of you, but some of you will be joining me live this Wednesday, the 15th. On YouTube for the informal just community hangout, and Jason will be a guest there, and we'll go over some fun stuff. Who knows, we might be doing something cool. We don't know. We do everything live over here, and over at the Dead Pair podcast, they're very structured and organized and planned 4 months out. So we'll revert to the expertise of everybody over there to determine what the schedule is for the rest of the week. So thanks for listening, guys. I appreciate your time. And don't worry, I bombed you guys with about 5 podcasts in 4 days. So the schedule is still going to stay how it is. I'll see you on the live on Wednesday, and I'll be putting out some more educational stuff later this week. Cool. Adios.